All right, welcome. In this video, it is being predicted that the stock market, the US stock market main indexes in the New York Stock Exchange will crash on April 13th, 2026. But to be more precise, it's also believed that this will begin on the Sunday night, on April 12th, because the futures markets are open on the 12th, Sunday night, US time zone. The reason this is the case is that the markets are open in Asia on the 13th in the morning, which is still the 12th in the US. Okay, and it's also predicted that there will be the escalation, or rather the surprise attack by the US on Iran on the 12th, possibly the 11th. And that's related, but it's not necessary. This prediction is for the stock market. Whether or not the attack happens on the 11th or the 12th to coincide with this stock market crash, it's not relevant, because I just want to be clear, what I'm predicting in this video anyway is the stock market crash. It could well be that the blamed reason for the crash would be the resumption, or rather the new stage of the war and escalation with a ground invasion of one of the islands or the shoreline of the Strait of Hormuz or something. Or just the resumption of the promised bombing of the power plants and bridges, for example. Okay? The date that this is being recorded is April 9th. And I want to prove that to you. This email that I'm about to read, which will explain how this prediction is known, as you can see, was composed on April 7th. All right? April 7th. Okay? So that's prior to the possible surprise attack on the 11th or 12th, and it's also prior to this predicted crash. Now, I think it's also possible that the stock market, whether it be the Dow or the S&P 500 index, will lose 13% in one day. There's reason to think that that's possible also, but that's not necessary for this prediction. The prediction is simply that we're going to experience the beginning. Well, I should also add this. It'll be a significant crash on the 13th, on the Monday, and on the 12th when the futures markets are open. But also, it will be the beginning, if you will, because the reason why I say if you will is because the all-time peak high was made in early February, but we've now made a secondary peak, or that's at least what I'm predicting. We've made a secondary peak going into this weekend here as I'm recording this. It's the Thursday, April 9th. Okay, going into the weekend, we will be making or have made a secondary peak, and then from there, will commence the biggest stock market crash in history. That's also a prediction. So I'm not only predicting that there will be a biggest stock market crash in history, which very, very few people are actually predicting, but I'm predicting the precise date that it'll commence. Okay? Now, this video was originally produced, in other words, after this relatively brief introduction here, I'm going to, in other words, talk in this introduction for a few minutes, and then after that will be the portion of the video that was recorded prior to March 13th. And that's because of a prophetic sign that occurred on March 8th, which is largely the focus of this video. The prophetic significance of the sign that occurred on March 8th. And because it was not really understood at that time, what God was precisely intending with this prophetic sign on March 8th that's related to this stock market crash. It was assumed that the information within the sign, the details, indicated adding 5 days to get March 13th. The reason for that is because God was indeed heavily pointing to, in advance, to March 13th. And also in relation to this prediction for the stock market crash. God is communicating a black swan event in the stock market, which is what I'm saying is going to happen on April 13th. Okay? And we did receive the relevant clear signs, and I won't get into the details. But for one thing, there was the auction that God uses records for signs, and the highest record selling ever sale price for a guitar sold in an auction. And the name of the guitar, it actually has a name. It's called the Black Strat. The Black, what's Strato something? I'm not a musician or a guitarist, so it's one of those, it's the name of the Fender, Strato Fender or whatever, okay? You get the idea. But it's the nickname for the guitar used by Doug Gilmour of Pink Floyd when he recorded The Dark Side of the Moon, which, yes, it is related to how the astronauts just went to the dark side of the moon and were the first ever to see it with their own eyes. Anyway, that's another story that'll be explained in another video. So it's all related, but so it was a black swan sign. We had and it was involving money. Furthermore, on the album, The Dark Side of the Moon, is the hit song by Pink Floyd, Money. Okay? And that's what, of course, we're talking about here is the collapse or loss of money in the stock market. And it's a black swan event, hence the black strat. Also, that was the day that the new replacement leader for the Khomeini, supreme leader, the son of the Khomeini, made his first, and God uses firsts for signs, he made his first statement. It was the written statement, which was a very important prophetic sign. And again, I won't explain the details here. But there was also a black swan event because, for one thing, these supreme leaders and the clerics of this branch of Islam are known for wearing all black garb. It was a black swan sign, all right? There's more to that too. Now, back to this video here. I'm going to be talking about what happened on March 8th. And it wasn't for adding 5 days. Well, it could be because March 13th was a step. And the reason for thinking that it involved 5 days, as will be explained later in this video, was because there were 5 family members in the mansion owned by Rihanna and her husband, ASAP Rocky, the two famous singers and rapper, famous singer and rapper. Okay, and they have 3 children, and that's part of the sign. They're children, in fact, as will be explained. And this is very, very, and it's so much, of course, involved because God doesn't just stop there. He connects it's all a big picture of signs. It's an interconnected web. And I'll explain how it connects to the Super Bowl in 2023, for example. The Super Bowl that Rihanna performed at for the halftime show. All right. And one thing to say right now, too, before we continue, is that when this introduction is over, and when the prediction comes to pass, it will prove that all of the information that was recorded prior to March 13th is 100% valid. Because March 13th was a step, because it was a black swan sign date. And so you could say that the 5 days was correct. But it turns out, well, you know what? Why it's also correct is because, as I will explain, March 8th, the sign on March 8th was for the purpose of adding exactly 5 weeks. I didn't even realize that until just now. I was just trying to explain to you what to tell you to not be confused later in the video when I start talking about March 13th. It all needs to be talked about. And in the process, I wanted to explain how March 13th was known because of the addition of the 5 days. But it just dawned on me just now that, well, also the March 8th sign was for adding 5 weeks. And so the fact that we can add the exact 5 weeks is confirmation for how it was also including the addition of adding 5 days to get the step in the trail of signs that is leading to the Black Swan event. Now, another thing, this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It is an interconnected web of signs, and none of the prophetic signs can be properly or fully understood without their context and connections to the other prophetic signs. And this is something that the vast majority of people that are claiming to be interested in prophetic signs completely miss, and this is also why they completely miss the vast majority of the prophetic signs, which are only being explained on this channel. Because this channel recognizes how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, and it's an interconnected web with these nodes, if you will, where the connections connect, right? And it's, like I said, not possible to understand fully the intended meaning of any of the prophetic signs without these connections in context to the other prophetic signs. And the thing is that this is how the Bible is. This is exactly how the Bible is. The Bible is not a linear document. It can be moved through in an infinite number of pathways because it is all interconnected. I mean, anyone knows the Bible knows this. You can take one part in the New Testament and line it up with the old part in the Old Testament. It's the same theme. These things connect, okay? And it is through the pattern. It's through the pattern that we are able to discern what's hidden in the Bible. The message of the Bible is through these patterns. And it's likewise with the prophetic signs. And this is like a thing that is said. It is said that the Greek or the Gentile thinks of prophecy in terms of prediction, result, prediction, fulfillment, black and white, cause and effect kind of mode of thinking. Whereas the Jew thinks of prophecy in the terms of pattern. And that's because it is pattern. It's because the prophecy in the Bible is pattern, and that is the way it is with God's prophetic signs. And so it's necessary to recognize the patterns in God's prophetic signs, which, as I am explaining here, is really only being explained on this channel in terms of these connections, which is a long way of explaining how it is that March 13th is what I called a step in the trail of signs. And prior to a date that God is pointing to in advance, it's not necessarily possible to know whether or not that date that he's pointing to in regards to a particular theme and prediction will be the end point of the trail in the fulfillment of this prediction, or another step in the trail of signs that's leading ultimately to the end date and the prediction, and the step thereby including more essential information that colors and fills to a deeper level our understanding of what is happening in what God is communicating through his signs. And it is through these steps and the trails of signs that God is able to tell these stories, which are only being told on this channel. And the reason for telling these stories, like this video I'll be explaining here in a minute, regarding this story regarding Rihanna, for example, the reason for this is because it is through these stories that God is able to communicate extremely important information and knowledge. And so that's why you need to listen to all of this video, because the analysis for March 13th was 100% correct. Okay? It was 100% correct. It was not quote unquote wrong. It was 100% correct. This is how it works. And I know far more than you how it works. I know far more than you or anyone how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. And this is how it works, okay? These steps in the trails of signs. And I know the purpose of the signs and connections is to tell these stories, which you need to know because of the information conveyed through the stories. And so let's get into this particular video that'll be telling one of these stories that God is telling. All right, so this is in italics because it's from the information that came prior to March 13th. The kick was made in the 48th state at the end of the fourth quarter with 8 seconds remaining. 4 plus 8 equals 12. It was Super Bowl 57. 5 plus 7 is 12. And as I explained later in this video, as I explained prior to March 13th, this is all about the Revelation 12 sign, the Super Bowl that hinted at Revelation chapter 12 through Rihanna. Because in a nutshell, she got dropped into the stadium on a platform surrounded by her minions of dancers, all dressed in white, while she was all dressed in bright red, like fire color red, right? Bright red, while caressing her pregnant stomach. It was, in fact, the announcement. Her halftime show was the announcement to the world that she was pregnant. And this is Revelation chapter 12, because in Revelation chapter 12, the woman is pregnant. And the red dragon is waiting at her feet, ready to devour the child once it is born. This is so amazing. You need to watch all of this video because the rest of the story will be told in the rest of the video. But the white dancers also, because after the rescue of the child before the dragon can consume it, the dragon and his angels, representing Satan and demons, are thrown down from heaven to earth, which is why she was dropped from the roof into the stadium with her dancers from up high. And in the background, as you would see from the television screen, behind her while she was being lowered into the arena were people in the stands who had lit up one of the lighters that the program had given them to light up at that time. And so it looked like there were stars all behind her. Well, that's exactly what's described in Revelation chapter 12. The metaphor of stars being thrown down from heaven to earth or falling to earth, with the dragon who sweeps his tail and a third of the stars to earth, which is a metaphor for the demons that come with the dragon Satan down to earth. So this is a Revelation chapter 12 sign. Now, that's why I wanted to add this here, just to get this introduction here, the fourth quarter. So the game, as I'll explain later, came down to the final seconds. It was an extremely close game. The final score was 38-35. And the prophetic sign within the game itself, aside from Rihanna's halftime performance, was all about this close score. And it came down to a final kick, a field goal made with 8 seconds remaining in the fourth quarter. And as I just mentioned, that hints at 12 in itself, which is further confirmation, a second witness to the relevance of Super Bowl 57 hinting at 12 because of the Revelation 12 sign. And this second witness is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. Okay? Now, The close scoring game came down to a kick made with 4+4 seconds remaining in the fourth quarter. It was the fourth Super Bowl played in the Four Corners state, Arizona. And it was exactly 4 times 40 weeks before Rihanna and her family in her home were in her home when a woman shot at it. In the news, we don't know the identity of the woman. Maybe they have reported it since, but on the first day of the reporting, it was simply a woman. And that's because it's simply described as being a woman in Revelation chapter 12, whom Rihanna symbolized in her Revelation chapter 12 sign halftime show, which was exactly 4 times 40 weeks ahead of the shooting by a woman. Okay? And this is the pattern here, like I was saying earlier. 4+4 seconds, fourth Super Bowl in the Four Corners state, and 4 times 40 weeks exactly between her halftime show and the news of the shooting at her mansion on March 8th. Okay. Now, the score of the game is relevant because of how close it was and because it came down to the final seconds of the game. 4+4 seconds. As well, God uses records for signs. In this Super Bowl, the losing team scored the most points ever in a Super Bowl by a losing team. Okay, I'll repeat that. God uses records for prophetic signs. This Super Bowl was the Super Bowl in which the losing team scored the most points ever in a Super Bowl. It was 35 points, which is 5 times 7 points, and it was Super Bowl 57. So in other words, it's all pointing to this 35 points here, because God uses records for signs. And the score of the game was the prophetic sign. It was the story of the game of how close it was and how it came down to the final 4+4 seconds in the Four Corners state that was hosting its 4th Super Bowl. The final 4+4 seconds in the fourth quarter, I should add. Okay? So 35 points, 5 times 7 points, Super Bowl 57. Now, there's more to this, as I'm going to jump ahead anyway. The woman who shot at the mansion was 35 years old. That was part of the story. The identity of the woman was not mentioned, but her age was. I'm pretty sure maybe her name was mentioned. It wasn't, though. I've got a decent memory, and for whatever reason, the age of the woman was reported, but not anything more, which just further confirms that it's a Revelation 12 sign, because it's the woman. All right, now, so the final score was made in the final 4+4 seconds in the fourth quarter in the Four Corners state, exactly 4 times 40 weeks before the 35-year-old or 5 times 7-year-old woman shot at the mansion of the halftime show performer in Super Bowl 57, who depicted the woman in Revelation chapter 5+7, right? The woman shot at the mansion where the woman in Revelation chapter, where the woman in Super Bowl 57 was living. Because again, Rihanna is the woman in her halftime show. She represents the woman in Revelation chapter 12. Revelation chapter 5+7. And the 5 times 7-year-old woman shot at the mansion. And the two signs are exactly 4 times 40 weeks apart. Now, the final score was 38-35. On the date 3/8, the 35-year-old woman shot at the mansion of the woman who performed in the show at the Super Bowl in which the final score of the game, and it all came down to this close score of 38-35. In other words, the date of the shooting on 3/8 by the 35-year-old connected precisely with the score 38-35, because the date 3/8 hints at 38. This, as you can see now, is from God. I forgot to add that at the beginning. The reasons that I'll be explaining in this video, if you are a hardcore fundamentalist, religionist, agnostic atheist, because that is a religion, if you are a hardcore fundamentalist, agnostic atheist, a really stubborn person, then, and you believe that this prediction for the beginning of the biggest stock market crash in history, precisely on April 13th, is a coincidence, well then, what needs to be said to you is the reasons that I'm explaining obviously make that otherwise. Right? No one is creative enough. No human being is creative enough to concoct the reasons that I'm explaining in this video in their own imagination. If you really think that, that would make me a crazy person for doing such a thing. But you are the crazy person. I'll say this. You are a fool. You are a fool. A complete, utter fool if you think that. It's not just irrational. You are a fool. But I know why. Because God did not design human beings to be rational. It's spiritual in nature. And you are making your decision, which is how we are created in the image of God, through our free will, to either go with God or not and rebel. Right? This is clear. But you really didn't need this, because the evidence is all around you that there's an intelligent designer. The science that you think says that there's no God is late 18th century, early 19th century science. You are stuck in a time warp, because early 20th century science proves that there's an intelligent designer, but you've succumbed to the propaganda in the culture that doesn't talk about this evidence. But the truth is, you do not want there to be a personal being, righteous Christian God of the Bible to be true. You'll also accept, probably, like most anyway, an Indian Hindu interpretation of God, a collective consciousness, an impersonal energy that is the universe itself, and you are part of that God, etc. But that's not what the science says, and that's not what this video is saying. There is a beginner to the creation. The Big Bang proves that there was a beginning. It disproves pantheism or Hinduism or the New Age. Now, I wanted to interject that because, as you can see here, we've got a clear pattern going on. We've got the 38-35 score connecting with the date 3/8, which hints at 38, and the shooting by the 35-year-old woman. Well, why is God doing this? Well, this is why. Because in the Super Bowl, and again, the 35 points was the most ever scored by a losing team, which God did that to highlight the significance of the 35 points by a losing team. The score 38-35 and the shooting on the date 3/8 by the 35-year-old woman hint at adding to the date 3/8 35 days to reach the date on which the Dow will lose many points, as in the record losing team's points. In other words, the record loss of points hints at a loss of points in the stock market, possibly a record loss of points in one day. This is confirmed through Rihanna's, which, by the way, I believe would be, well, never mind. This is confirmed through Rihanna's most famous song, which she performed in the halftime show, obviously. Her most famous song is Umbrella, in which a rapper, similar to her husband, in other words, that's the significance of her husband in this prophetic story, A$AP Rocky, who was in the mansion at the time. He's basically the same thing as the rapper who rapped in her song, Jay-Z. And in the song, he raps about the Dow Jones stock index losing points. Yes. Can you believe that? Well, it's a phrase I don't like to use now that I am a believer. It's just a euphemism, but you get my point. It's amazing. The date 3/8 plus 35 days gets us to April 12th. On this date, in the U.S. time zone, the futures markets for stocks will be open, as it will be Monday morning in Asia, as I explained at the beginning of the video. And it was already believed that God is pointing to April 13th in terms of a stock market crash. It makes sense that this crash would begin with the futures market on Sunday night, on April 12th. In other words, once I recognized this pattern that I just explained, this was the first instance in which I recognized April 12th. I'll be making other videos about April 12th, hopefully before April 12th, but time is running out. At least we've got this one video here documented, and it's amazing because of the date 3/8 ending at 38 and the 35 points, the record losing points, adding 35 days, the 35-year-old woman to the Dow losing points. And that's sung about in her most famous song. Crazy. And by the way, the children, though she was pregnant with the rapper, A$AP Rocky, he's part of this story, right? And he's basically like, in terms of symbolism, a twin for Jay-Z, who sings in the song or raps in the song. All right, now there's a lot more to this story, and it was recorded prior to March 13th, like I said. Don't be confused. Now you know, I explained it earlier. March 13th was a date God was pointing to, and it was all 100% correct, all of the analysis. When the prediction comes to pass, it'll prove this, that the analysis for March 13th was correct, and I have the authority to say that because I know far more than you how this works. And so with that, God bless, and watch the rest of this video. All right, welcome. This video is predicting that the stock market will crash on Friday, March 13th, 2026. It'll be a significant crash. It won't just be an everyday kind of crash. It'll be quite something. It'll be a black swan event, like Black Monday, for example, in 1987, or Black Thursday or Black Tuesday in the 1929 crash, etc. And it'll be on this specific date, March 13th. It's also speculated that trading will be halted at some point during the day after the large loss triggers the circuit breaker. It's possible that that will happen. And also, it's also predicted that this crash that's predicted for March 13th will be the beginning of the biggest crash in all of history. in the stock market, which will obviously take more than one day to unfold. This particular video will explain one of the many reasons for how this prediction is known ahead of time. Being able to predict this in itself, this specific event for this specific date, obviously makes this prediction from God. However, if you are a hardcore agnostic atheist, and all agnostic atheists are hardcore fundamentalist religionists, and you refuse to accept that this prediction in itself is not from God, if you are that irrational, which agnostic atheists are, then the reasons that I'll be providing in this video will also prove this, that this is clearly from God. Because as you will see, these reasons that I'll be explaining could not have been concocted in the imagination of a human being. They are from God. And this will prove the righteous Christian God of the Bible. The reason why 1/3 of the Bible is prophecy is for the purpose of God proving it as being the inspired word of God. No other religion remotely even compares. I mean, no offense. Well, take the offense, whatever. The so-called prophecies in Islam are literally a joke. They are laughable. They are a joke. And there are no prophecies in Hinduism, which is what the New Age, New Spirituality movement in the West is. A repackaged Hinduism. There's no prophecies in that religion, and the prophecies in Islam are literally a joke. But 1/3 of the Bible is prophecy for the purpose of proving it, and it is what convinced me, because prior to learning about prophecies in the Bible, I was convinced that it was the last thing that made any sense. Also, by the way, the disciples knew that Jesus was the Messiah because of his fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Now, so that's what this video is. It's a prophecy from God. It'll prove the righteous Christian God of the Bible, not your God of the New Age, not your God of Islam, not your so-called impersonal being, collective consciousness. You are a part of God. God is the universe, God of the New Age or Hinduism. Not that God. The personal being, creator of the creation, not the creation itself, God, that is the author of the Bible. That God. The righteous Christian God of the Bible. Which the other religions have a problem with, which is why, contrary to what some people that don't think very much think, not all religions are different pathways up the same mountain, etc. They all fundamentally conflict with each other. They cannot all be true. Only one of them is true, or none of them are true. But they all fundamentally conflict. Not just a little bit conflict, they fundamentally conflict. Either God is an impersonal being, or he is a personal being. He can't be both. The world is not round and flat. So if someone thinks they're flat, he can't just have his truth and we'll just all get along. There's only one truth. Either the world is round or it's flat. It's a sphere or it's a flat plane. It can't be both. And God can't be a personal being and an impersonal energy that is the creation itself. It's not possible. And either Jesus was the Messiah or he wasn't the Messiah and was just a prophet, like the Islamists are obsessed with claiming. And literally that is the Islamic religion. If you want to know what the religion is of Islam, it's that. The religion literally is obsessed with how Jesus was just a prophet. And the reason is because that religion is from Satan, as is all of the other religions. They're all forms of deception. And one of the forms of deception from Satan is to devise a religion that was for the so-called Arabs to claim as their own and essentially be talking points about how Jesus was just a prophet. Okay? All right. So, let's get into the reasons in this video. It's fascinating what God has done here. So, we have this famous pop singer, Rihanna, and her famous rapper husband, ASAP Rocky. Okay? And they live in a home in Beverly Hills. And on March 8th, they were shot at. A deranged woman drove up to their property in front of their home and opened fire. I think she opened fire with a rifle and shot at the house multiple times. No one was hurt or injured. Okay, but anyway, that and the woman that did this is 5 times 7 years old. Okay, she's 35, but this is 5 times 7. Now, the word vaccine is equal to 57 in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. And in God's signs, SHOTs, things that come out of guns and go into people are symbolic of things that come out of things and go into people. The shots. Okay? So we have the number for the shots, and we had the woman who took these shots at the mansion. Okay? Now, this occurred, this date, March 8th, is exactly, or was exactly, 4 times 40 weeks after Rihanna's halftime show at Super Bowl 57. Okay? So the woman was 5 times 7 years old, and she shot at the house exactly 4 times 40 weeks after Super Bowl 57. You see the rhyming here that God has done to confirm the matter? By the way, this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, works. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. So here we have a second witness. It's the 5 times 7-year-old to the Super Bowl 57. Now there's more. Just be patient here. Let me get through it. There's more to this. But the 44th president is the Antichrist, who will enforce the mark of the Antichrist, which is the shot. That's why the exact 4 times 40 weeks. But also, as I wrote down here, this Super Bowl was the 4th Super Bowl to be played in Phoenix. And then we have this 4th Super Bowl to be played in Phoenix, 4 times 40 weeks to the next Rihanna sign. From Rihanna's halftime show to the shooting at her mansion. This 4th Super Bowl in Phoenix is another confirmation. But so is the 48th state. Because as I'm getting at, 4 plus 8 is 12, and so is 5 plus 7. Which is why at the time, on the day of Rihanna's halftime show, it was obvious that it was her show, a prophetic Revelation chapter 12 sign. Her halftime show was a Revelation chapter 12 sign, and it took about maybe a minute. I'm just, exaggerating. I don't know how long it took. It was a while ago. But it didn't take long for it to be recognized that Super Bowl 57 hinted at 12, because 5 plus 7 equals 12. By the way, the reason why that became so quickly is because this wasn't the first time that God used a 5-7 to hint at 12. For example, there was a 5.7 magnitude earthquake in 2019, years before this, that was clearly a Revelation chapter 12 sign. But that's another subject. Okay, so the Super Bowl 57 was also on the 12th day of the month, on the date 2/12. And Rihanna symbolized the woman in the prophecy in Revelation chapter 12. So let me describe that, because I haven't described it in these emails here, because this is just something that, we know. By the way, these are notes. What I'm reading are notes to a friend that follows this stuff closely. Now, so in that Super Bowl, she appeared. The halftime show began with her dropping from the sky. She was on a platform that was lowered down from way up high into the stadium. Okay, because the stadium in Phoenix is a dome. So she was able to be let down from the roof of the dome. Okay, so this is quite something because of Revelation chapter 12. Now, she was in an all uniform, bright red color dress or outfit. I'm pretty sure it was a long, from what I recall, a long red, dress. Not a miniskirt or anything like that. But she came down on the platform with her hand rubbing her belly, or maybe both hands, because she had a tight, although the dress was tight and you could see that she had a big protruding belly. In other words, it was obvious that she was pregnant. But this was a surprise to the pop music world because she had not informed anyone that she was pregnant. So in other words, her halftime show was also her announcement that she was pregnant. The world did not know that she was pregnant before she came down rubbing her belly like she did, with her big belly. She was pregnant. She was in a bright red, all one color red dress outfit. Okay, and around her also being let down were her many dancers dressed in white to contrast with the red. They were dressed in all white. And let's see. Okay, so Revelation chapter 12 is about a woman who gives birth. Well, first, before she gives birth, she's pregnant. And then in the chapter, she gives birth. At the feet of the woman waiting for the birth is the red dragon. He's waiting to devour the child. And then after the birth, the child is caught up to heaven, rescued from the dragon. And then the dragon is thrown down with his minions from heaven to earth, which is why Rihanna descended in this bright red dress from up high with her minions, her dancers, down to earth. It was such an obvious Revelation chapter 12 sign. It was amazing. And again, it was Super Bowl 57, which also hints at 12. And it was in the 48th state, which 4 plus 8 equals 12. Okay, now, that sign was never really fulfilled, or rather, it never made sense in the big picture of signs, which is only being explained on this channel. Now it fits. It means something now. Before, it was just something that was put on the shelf to be pulled off the shelf later when it makes more sense, which is right now. Because that fourth Super Bowl in Phoenix is exactly 4 times 40 weeks to this Rihanna shooting, which hints at shots. And it was the 35-year-old, as in 5 times 7, as in Super Bowl 57. Okay, you can see the pattern here. But I'm just scratching the surface. We're only just beginning here. Rihanna was shot at, I should say, on the date 38 by a 35-year-old. And in Super Bowl 57, 35 is 5 times 7, the Chiefs, one of the teams playing in the Super Bowl, a team that also wears red, and the dragon is red, which symbolizes the Antichrist, and the Chiefs symbolize the Antichrists. There's 2 of them in Bible prophecy. So whether you have chief or chiefs, we have Antichrist or Antichrists. And the Chiefs scored 38 points against their opponents who scored 35 points. That's amazing, because on the date 38, we have the 35-year-old. Again, in the Super Bowl, the score was 38 to 35. the date 38 hints at 38, and we have a 35-year-old. And in the score in the Super Bowl, it was 38-35. That's how the God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. This is a clear second witness. Okay? It's amazing. Again, the date 38 hints at 38, and we have the shooting by the deranged 35-year-old. In the Super Bowl, which was exactly 4 times 40 weeks earlier, and was the 4th Super Bowl in Phoenix, or rather you could say the 4th Super Bowl in the 48th state, the score was 38-35. Okay, so you get it. You get what I'm saying here now. So, in general, God uses records for signs. The Eagles' 35 points in the game was the most ever in a Super Bowl by a losing team. Okay, the losing team scored 35 points, and this was the most ever that a losing team scored in a Super Bowl. And God uses records for signs. So this is more confirmation of the relevance of the 35 points because it was a record. And again, it conforms, it's a parallel pattern with the 35-year-old. All right. Now, Super Bowl 57 was in the 48th state. As I mentioned, 5 plus 7. So Super Bowl 57, 5 plus 7, 48th state. 4 plus 8 equals 12. 5 plus 7 equals 12. Okay. This is a quote from Wikipedia. The Chiefs won the game 38-35 on a game-winning field goal by Harrison Butker. The game came down to this last play of the game by Harrison Butker. It was the dramatic climax of the game because prior to this last event of the game, the score was tied at 35-35. By the way, that also is more confirmation of the relevance of 35 because the game came down to when the game was tied at 35 points. Okay. Butker's game-winning... so God uses Butker in general. This isn't the first time that God has used Harrison Butker for prophetic signs. Not only that, Harrison Butker is a man who has decided that he doesn't care what other people think and gives his opinion on things because he first got into this category of being a rebel and saying what he thinks when he refused to take the mark of the Antichrist during the CVD disease days when every NFL player was compelled to take it. But Butker refused. He had already established his career. He was brave. He was courageous, which is the point of the mark of the Antichrist and not taking it, as Bible prophecy warns to not do. Otherwise, one will go to hell. By the way, the vast majority of quote-unquote Christians have already taken it, but there's nowhere in the Bible that says one cannot repent. But Butker, a star player, was willing to sacrifice his career and popularity, etc., but also money for the sake of his convictions, which makes him a beautiful man in the eyes of God. And Butker is also a proud Catholic. He is always or often talking about how he has come to, how in his life he came to have religious conviction. I'm not saying Catholicism is good. I'm saying it isn't. It's not a legitimate denomination of Christianity. But God does not hate Catholics, and I'm not saying that Catholics won't be saved. But if they will be, it'll be in spite of their Catholicism, not because of it. Like in the case of Harrison Butker, for example. Because the Antichrist is the Pope, and Bible prophecy from the Old Testament has made it very clear that a Pope would ultimately be the Antichrist, and anyone with any wisdom would know this, which is why there wouldn't have been a Protestant Reformation had there not been this knowledge, which has been conveniently lost in the last 50 or so years, just in time for the Antichrist. Pope Francis, who will be resurrected from the dead by demons in 2029. But don't get me wrong, I'm not a pro-Protestant guy either. I'm certainly not a pro-Luther guy. Protestants are just as deceived as Catholics, but in their own unique way. And that's another subject. And if you are a Christian, the most important video for you on this channel is the 23 church signs video. Speaking of 23 and Butker, he is definitely associated with the number 23. Because as I'm about to talk about, and this is just a coincidence, so I might as well mention it, but he had a double doink kick from the 23-yard line with the score at 23 in Chicago, the home of the second of the two antichrists, Barack Obama. And that double doink kick was exactly 50 weeks as in the church, and the Chiefs' colors, which symbolize fire, symbolizes the church, Pentecost, the 50th day, hence why the 50 weeks exactly after the other double doink that was also in Chicago involving Philadelphia, which was the team that Butker played in this Super Bowl that he beat. And that double doink on January 6th, 2019 was extremely prophetic also, involving, at the time, the quarterback, Nick Foles, and all of that. So anyway, let's see. So back to what I was saying about Butker. Again, this is a quote from Wikipedia. The Chiefs won the game 38-35 on a game-winning field goal by Harrison Butker. So the game all came down to Butker. Butker's game-winning kick was set up by a pivotal defensive holding call penalty on Philadelphia cornerback James Bradbury, which was criticized by some observers but supported by others, including Bradbury himself. Okay, so Bradbury took ownership of the penalty ultimately, but if you watch it on YouTube, you will see that it is controversial, and that just highlights the fact that it's a prophetic sign. The fact that it's so controversial. In other words, this was the play of the game, if you will. And so that lifts up, raises the significance of James Bradbury, for example, and also the game-winning kick by Harrison Butker that came after this call. Okay, so if relevant, the game came down to Butker. I should delete that. It is relevant. The game came down to Butker. Butker is prophetic and a voice for God's truth, as I have explained. And he's a truth for the mark of the Antichrist, which is what this is all about, because of the shots, like I've explained. And the Antichrist. The mark of the Antichrist is the shot. So this Revelation chapter 12 sign, the rescue, in fact, also of the child, is symbolic of the rescue of the church. Butker played Philadelphia, one of the 7 churches in the book of Revelation. All right, so Butker is God's prophetic voice for truth, but I should also add God's voice for truth regarding the mark of the Antichrist, which is the thing that he became known for, which was opposing it, standing up for his convictions and beliefs, and willing to sacrifice his career. This guy is the man. He is the beautiful man in God's eyes. Okay? Now, Butker wears number 7. Well, just so happens that that's God's signature number. Now, in Super Bowl 57, Philadelphia, as in the 7 churches, like I just mentioned, scored a record 5 times 7 points in Super Bowl 57. And again, 57 equals vaccine, which is what Butker opposed. Rihanna and her family were shot, as in mark of the Antichrist, shot at by a 5 times 7-year-old, as in vaccine, 5 days before the predicted crash on the anniversary of the Pope Antichrist's election. Okay, and the Antichrist is the dragon, or vice versa. And Rihanna was the dragon in the sign in the Super Bowl. Okay, so let me repeat this. 5 days before the predicted crash on the anniversary of the Pope's election, which will be March 13th, and the Pope is the Antichrist dragon, Rihanna was shot, as in the VACCINE 57, in simple English gematria, shot at, and this connects to her performance in Super Bowl 57, in which the game came down to the 5 times 7 points tie game, but then was won by player number 7. But what I'm getting at here, though, too, is that the 5 days pairs with the 57 to give us the hint at 57, which is equivalent to VACCINE, and also hints at Super Bowl 57. And the 5 times 7-year-old. 5 days, player 7. So in other words, again, player 7's game-winning kick connects to, Rihanna's halftime show in the Super Bowl, which was won by player number 7's kick, connects to the 5 times 7-year-old, which in turn connects with 5 days to the crash and the anniversary of the Antichrist. So 5 days and number 7. You see that? It's straightforward. Player number 7's kick connects to the Rihanna shooting, which connects with 5 days. So 5 and 7. But this will be confirmed more. But by the way, first, before I get there, James Bradbury gives us a J and a B, the initials, which gives us the 10th letter and the second letter of the alphabet, which gives us 12. Another confirmation of the relevance of James Bradbury and therefore the relevance of Butker's kick. And again, it was Super Bowl 57, that James Bradbury was the play of the game. 5 plus 7 equals 12. And it was in the 48th state. 4 plus 8 equals 12. Okay, now this James Bradbury gives us 12 is confirmation of the significance of the end of the game. He played for Philadelphia, one of the 7 churches. This confirms the significance of Butker's number 7 jersey and his kick. So Butker's number 7 kick was set up by the player from Philadelphia, which hints at the 7 churches. Just more confirmation of the number 7 here, which pairs, like I'm saying, with this 5 days. Because from the shot at the mansion, it's 5 days to the anniversary of the crash. To the crash that's predicted to occur on the anniversary of the Antichrist dragon. Earlier in the game, Butker doinked a 42-yard kick. Okay, this is just another witness, confirmation. Because again, for Butker. Because again, like I explained, Butker is all about the double doink that he kicked. There's like tons more to it, right? It was from the 23-yard line with the score at 23, and it was also exactly 23 weeks after the prophetic birthday of Harrison Ford, and the guy's name is Harrison Butker, and on. Like literally on and on, because Harrison Ford's prophetic birthday was exactly 23 weeks after the Super Bowl on the date 2-3, which was exactly 2,300 days after the 23rd anniversary of the 1989 earthquake, and on and on and on, okay? It's all about the number 23. But anyway, the point, though, is that double doinks are, and this wasn't the only doink that was prophetic by Butker. So Butker is Mr. Prophetic Double Doink. Let's just put it that way. And he kicked a doink. I mean, had he not kicked a doink with the 42-yard kick, a doink, by the way, is when the football hits the upright and doesn't go through. So had he not kicked a doink, the score wouldn't have been tied at the end of the game, which led to his prophetic kick at the end of the game. Now, the doink, which was prophetic, as you can see, as I've just explained, was a 42-yard kick, which further confirms the prophetic significance of it, because Revelation chapter 12 is all about the 42 months. Twice it mentions that the period of the dragon is 42 months, which is only symbolism, by the way. There isn't a literal 42 months that people are looking for. So you can stop, if you are one that is looking for a precise beginning of 42 months for the end times, you can stop now. And I need to explain something, actually. I know far better than you or anyone the reason and purpose for this prediction that is from God. And it is for more than proving that the righteous Christian God of the Bible is the true God. There's already an overwhelming amount of evidence for that. The purpose for this prediction that is from God, The reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove to you the controversial things that I am saying in this video. There is zero, absolutely zero debate regarding these controversial things. So, for example, if you think the mark of the Antichrist couldn't be the thing that we're talking about, that already happened, based on your understanding of Bible prophecy, now you know that your understanding of Bible prophecy is incorrect. And I don't want to elaborate anymore. This isn't a video about that. And right now, I'm only making the point so that I don't have to elaborate. I'm giving you I'm saying that I have the authority to tell you this. And regarding the identities of the two antichrists and also their chronological order, by the way, for those that think the order is in the other way around, this is also proven to be true when this prediction comes to pass. And I know more than you. I know far more than you the reason and purpose for this prediction that is from God and the purpose of this video and video channel. So if you were going to continue, for example, playing the Antichrist guessing game because of your interpretation of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 that tells you that it's a mystery and you are not able to know the identity of the Antichrist based on your heretical salvation doctrine, which has you interpret 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 incorrectly, you're wrong. And this prediction proves it. That's the purpose of it. So you are wasting your time if you are to continue playing the Antichrist guessing game, and you are also wasting your time if you refuse to accept that the thing in its current form, in its form that was taken in 2021, is not the mark of the Antichrist. It is. And there's no debate at all. Period. I hope you understand and I hope I'm clear. All of the controversial things that I am explaining are overwhelmingly proven to be the case through God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, which will be proven to be true when this prediction comes to pass. And that is the purpose of this prediction. Okay? If you would like to learn how your commonly held objections to why it wasn't the mark of the Antichrist are not true, you can also watch the snake bite video on this channel. All right? Now, Butker kicked a double doink on December 22nd, 2019 against the Chicago Bears in Chicago, exactly 50 weeks. Pentecost literally meaning 50th day, which symbolizes the church, which is symbolized by fire, Pentecost, which is what the Chiefs symbolize, which is why the exact 50 weeks. So Butker for the Chiefs kicked the double doink in Chicago, the home of the Antichrist, exactly 50 weeks after the Bears kicked a very prophetic double doink, which was when the term double doink was coined by Al Michaels, as in the Archangel Michael that throws the dragon down from heaven to earth. And that game was against Philadelphia, as in the seven churches, and as in the Philadelphia church, that is the only church that Jesus said would be rescued and raptured. And that was in a playoff game, prophetic playoff game on January 6, 2019. So that's what I was referring to earlier, okay? This just further serves to confirm the prophetic significance of the doink that Butker kicked and the game-winning field goal in this Super Bowl 57, okay? The prophecy of, in other words, of Super Bowl 57 is all about the Butker kick at the end of the game. Now, to arrive at Super Bowl 57, the Chiefs beat Cincinnati in a game that also came down to a kick by Butker at the end of the game. Just more confirmation of the pattern. The kick was made in the 48th state at the end of the fourth quarter with 8 seconds remaining. 4 plus 8 equals 12. It was Super Bowl 57, and 5 plus 7 equals 12. More confirmation that Butker is pointed to here, and that it is a Revelation chapter 12 sign, because of Rihanna's halftime show, which is why the game that came down to the fourth quarter and the fourth Super Bowl played in the 48th state was exactly 4 times 40 weeks before the shooting at Rihanna's mansion. Now, Rihanna, ASAP Rocky, her husband, and their 3 kids equals 5 people in the family, which confirms 5 days from the shooting to March 13th, the date of the predicted crash. Okay, also, as I'll mention later, the name Rocky is 5 letters. But the woman who did the shooting was charged with 11 counts. 11 is the 5th prime number. This further confirms the addition of 5 days. Okay, let me just jump down to here. Rock in the Bible is symbolism for Jesus. The date 38 hints at 3/8, and the name Jesus in Greek in the New Testament is equivalent to 888 in Greek gematria. ASAP Rocky hints at the soon return of Jesus, the as soon as possible return of Jesus, right? Rocky has 5 letters. The shooting at ASAP Rocky's home with 5 family members is 5 days before the predicted crash in the Dow. I'm jumping ahead, but let's just do it now. Why not? ASAP Rocky hints at Jay-Z, another famous rapper from, I think, around the same time period. Both of them being past their prime of popularity. But they're like the same thing, and that's why I don't even know who's who, because I don't follow rap, but we've all heard of their names, but who knows what they do or whatever. They're basically the same person, okay? And so, I'm just joking. If you're into rap, forgive me. well, no, actually, because, rap is not something a Christian should be listening to. So I don't apologize. Rihanna and Jay-Z's song Umbrella contains the lyric. This is the thing here. Rihanna's most famous song ever is Umbrella. And in the song, Jay-Z raps. She's married to a famous rapper who's basically the same thing as Jay-Z. Jay-Z raps in her song Umbrella, which she obviously, of course, sang at Super Bowl 57. And when she descended, and by the way, rain descends from the sky, just like the dragon does, just like she did. Okay, the song Umbrella contains the lyric, quote, coming down with the Dow Jones, unquote. Can you believe this? Can you believe this? Okay, let's go back here now. As I wrote, crazy. Are you kidding me? That's just crazy, okay? Because that was learned after it was learned of the 5 days connection. As you can see here, these notes are in the order of things that were learned. It wasn't learned until this point that the song contains the lyric coming down with the Dow Jones, but we had already realized that the crash of the predicted crash of the Dow Jones is 5 days after the shooting of the family of 5 with Rocky, 5 letters. 5th prime number of counts for the woman that did the shooting. Rihanna was the woman in Revelation chapter 12 sign. Wow. Now, the woman is from the 27th state. Butker's kick that won the game was from 27 yards. Another confirmation. The date 38, the date of the shooting this year, was exactly 31 months, which is the 5th super prime number. In other words, 11 is the 5th prime number, and 31 is the 11th prime number. So the 5th super prime number, which God uses. We got the 5 days connection, but going backwards from this date, forwards 5 days to the predicted crash in the Dow, she has a song about the crashing of the Dow. Can you believe it? And it's her most famous song. But that's a 5 days connection going forward. We have the 5th super prime number of months going backward. to this August 8th, 2023 date and the Lahaina fire. As my friend wrote, I forgot exactly, but I remember Rihanna was connected to this. I think she gave birth on the date 8/8. Yes, she did. I wrote. Lahaina and Rihanna rhyme. But also, she is from Barbados and is famous for being from Barbados, a tropical island. Maui, where Lahaina is a tropical island. Hopefully you recall the connection. She revealed when she performed at the Super Bowl that she was pregnant with her second child with ASAP Rocky. She later gave birth on August 1st, 2023. It was a boy whom they named Riot Rose. I think it was news that she had given birth on the day 8/8. Yes. So the news came out on 8/8, the day of the Lahaina fire, and she is Rihanna, which rhymes with Lahaina. And they're both tropical islands. Well, she's from a tropical island. Now, so I wrote, her birth announcement was her performance in a red dress, and she descended from above surrounded by her dancers, which is what made it a Revelation chapter 12 sign. Her pregnancy. So it makes perfect sense that the actual birth of the child would be a prophetic as well. And here we have it. Now we know it was. It was the same day as the Lahaina fire. By the way, the Chiefs symbolize fire. They won the Super Bowl. I just realized that. It just came to me now. The Chiefs symbolize fire, which symbolizes Pentecost, which symbolizes the church. Again, that's why Harrison Butker kicked the prophetic field goal, the double doink, I should say, exactly 50 weeks after the other double doink in Chicago. Because the Antichrist will persecute Christians. Pentecost, 50 weeks, 50th day, Pentecost, fire, Chiefs colors, yellow and red. And now she gave birth, her prophetic Revelation chapter 12 birth was on the day of the prophetic Lahaina fire. Amazing. Now, the thing too is that it's a 7 days difference from when she gave birth to the day of the fire and the day it was announced, her birth. And again, the Revelation 12 sign that she was in was all about the announcement of her pregnancy through her performance. So the date of the day that her birth was announced is the prophecy. It's actually more prophetic the day of her birth was announced than the actual date of the birth. But the difference is 7 days. And that further confirms the prophetic significance of the game that came down to the kick by player number 7, who refused the shot. And again, this connects to when her and her family were shot at, her 5-member family, 5 days before the prophetic crash, which when that happens will confirm everything that I'm saying in this video. Okay, now, also, the date of the announcement of the birth was 25 weeks and 2 days after the halftime show at the Super Bowl. This hints at 2,520 days, which is the prophetic number of days in Bible prophecy that symbolizes the period of the end and the Antichrist, which is again also symbolized by 42 months. And again, they're only symbolic. For those that are looking for the precise beginning of the 20 days, it's only symbolism. We are already inside the last 20 days. It began, but it was only symbolism, but it began on January 1st, 2025. But that was only symbolism. It's not an exact 20 days, but it's symbolically the last 7 years. That's why on that day was the 7+7 deaths in the car ramming in New Orleans, the 6+6+6 state, and the 7 people injured later in the day at the explosion at Trump Hotel of the vehicle. Anyway, that's another story. It was done by a Ford Lightning truck in New Orleans, and it was a Tesla that was exploded at the Trump Hotel trumping trumpets, 3 sets of 7 in the book of Joshua, trumpets, hence the 7 injured and 7 plus 7 deaths. And the Tesla, because Nikola Tesla was known for his experiments with lightning. And on that same day, there was the prophetic lightning, the 4 lightning strikes, 2 in each New York City and Washington, that hit the 2 iconic locations, which symbolized the 2 locations in each city that were hit on 9/11. Okay. I went off on a tangent. That's the way it works, because God's big picture of signs is 3-dimensional, and it's impossible to explain. It's very difficult anyway, because when you try to explain one part of the web, you end up pulling the entire web. Because it's all interconnected, which is why it's God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. It works in the same way the Bible does. It's all interconnected. The Bible, it's an infinite number of pathways one can take through the Bible. It's all interconnected, and one cannot understand the Bible without all of its interconnectedness. Okay. Well, so I already explained this. The Umbrella song with Jay-Z's lyric, coming down with the Dow Jones. Unbelievable. Well, I don't use that word in my vocabulary because it is all about believing. Now, Lahaina means cruel, merciless son. Rihanna had a son. That was the prophecy. She gave birth to a son. The child that is born in Revelation chapter 12 is a male child. In the Lahaina evacuation, people jumped over the seawall and into the ocean to escape the flames. That was one of the dramatic things about this. It was an evacuation from fire, as in like Pentecost, which symbolizes the rapture, and Pentecost is symbolized by fire. But they jumped over a seawall. Pentecost occurred, by the way, on the day that the walls collapsed on Jericho in the Bible. And God proved that through his signs in 2018, 19, and 20. And anyway, it's a symbolic 3 sets of 7 that the Israelites enacted before the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment. That's why the day that people jumped over the seawall in the evacuation, in the judgment sign on America, by the way, in the 50th state. I probably knew this at the time, I just forgot. But it was in the 50th state, and it's fire, which is Pentecost, which further serves to confirm the connection between Lahaina and Rihanna, because she did the halftime show in the Chiefs Super Bowl, and the Chiefs are all about fire and Pentecost. And by the way, their first Super Bowl victory, or at least the recent one in 2022 on the date 2-2, that came down to the play from the 22-yard line to the 22-yard line, giving the coach his first Super Bowl win in his 222nd win. That was all about the mark of the Antichrist, because the play was nicknamed the Sting play, which hints at the shot, the stinger. And the mark of the Antichrist in God's signs is symbolized by the number 22. And so that's further confirmation of all of what I'm saying in this video. The reason why the mark of the Antichrist is symbolized by the number 22 is because the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist described in the book of Ezekiel would have been a Tav mark, the last and 22nd letter in the Hebrew alphabet. And the mark of the Antichrist is described in the last and 22nd book out of 22 books in the Bible out of a total of 22 chapters, the book of Revelation. And also the mark of the Antichrist changes a person's chromosomes, which come in pairs, and each chromosome has 2 arms, as in 2 and 2, as in 22. Now, the jumping over the seawall, as in 3 sets of 7, because the walls of security collapsed on the 50th day, Pentecost, and the Israelites enacted the 3 sets of 7 before the walls of security collapsed. This day of the jumping over the seawall into the ocean from the fire is and also Jericho burned after, by the way. Amazing. I didn't think of all this before. So, and also this day was the 7 times 7th anniversary of Watergate, which is why they jumped into the water over the seawall, which is also the same symbolism as a gate in God's signs. Amazing. It was the 7 times 7th anniversary of Watergate. They jumped over the seawall into the ocean from the fire, okay, in the 50th state, which makes this all Pentecost, and it connects to Lahaina, Rihanna, Tropical Island, Chiefs win, fire, colors of the uniform, yellow and red, because the mark of the Antichrist is for the purpose of testing the faith of God's faithful, his church, symbolized by Pentecost. So anyway, again, so this fire jumping over the seawall, 3 sets of 7, is exactly 370 weeks, as in 3 sets of 7, before this September 10th, 2030 date, which is predicted to be the date of the fire from the sun, which is why she gave birth to a son. Lahaina, Rihanna, fire from the sun. Rihanna gives birth to a son. This predicted catastrophic solar flare that will knock out the power in America, the power grid. An umbrella is used to protect oneself from water falling from above, which hints at the coming fire from above. And there was the classic, or not classic, but the episode of, what's it called? I'm forgetting the name of the town, of the TV series, 1950s, 58 to be exact. There was an episode titled End of the World, in which a snake oil salesman arrives into the Old West town named Trump, selling the townsfolk a wall of security. This was obviously produced years before Trump came to sell his wall of security. The Israelites blew trumpets before the walls of security collapsed. Trump visited his wall of security on the date January 10th, which ends at 110, the age at which Joshua died in the Bible, and Joshua led the Israelites around the walls of security before they blew trumpets, and then the walls of security collapsed. And that date that Trump visited his wall of security was the day that news broke on CBS about one of its shows on CBS in 1958 was about a salesman selling a wall of security, but the threat was radiation from the sky, and he was selling an umbrella. He gave the people that were buying what he was selling umbrellas to protect them from the wall, as a wall of security. Yep. All right. Now, by the way, it's the book of Joshua that's the walls of security collapsed, and Joshua died at the age of 110. And on the same day that Trump visited the wall of security, Joshua trees were cut down in Joshua Tree Park due to the government shutdown over the dispute over funding of the border wall of security. Now, and in the Bible, a fallen tree is symbolic of judgment on a nation. And it was a national park. So, as I said earlier, I went through this earlier. Okay, so one last thing then is that the date of the shooting at Rihanna's mansion with the Rocky ASAP Rocky is, again, 4 times 40 weeks exactly after the Super Bowl. But it's also the 4 times 44th prime number of days to the predicted return to the White House of the 44th president, Antichrist, when he will return with the woman, his wife, the 49th president, Michelle Obama. He will be the vice president, which is how he'll overcome the 22nd Amendment. And then Michelle Obama will step down and he'll become the 50th president, which is why he is from the 50th state, and why all of this actually connects to the fire in the 50th state. Come to think of it. Wow. Amazing. Because again, from that fire, we have the connection of the 5th superprime number of months, which then connects with 5 days to the crash, but also then in turn connects with this 4 times 44th prime number of days, which is 1,049 days, which ends at the 49th president also. And it will be the first woman president. Rihanna portrayed the woman in Revelation chapter 12. Okay, here's an image of Rihanna descending on the platform at the beginning of the halftime show. And you can see, I forgot about this part. At the time, members of the spectators in the stadium were holding up these, lights that they were given to turn on during the performance. And this is symbolic of the stars, because the Revelation chapter 12 prophecy describes the dragon and how the dragon sweeps with his tail a third of the stars down from heaven to earth. And then the dragon is thrown down from heaven to earth with these stars, which are symbolic of the demons that come down with the Antichrist dragon. Or Satan is the dragon, but it's also symbolism for the Antichrist. The dragon's representative is the Antichrist, in other words. In fact, the second of the two Antichrists is described as being as having the ability to speak like a dragon, which is, by the way, one confirmation that Obama is the second of the two Antichrists, because he became famous, he became the president on his ability to deliver a speech and his ability to lie with a straight face. I mean, he is the best liar in history in terms of lying with a straight face, which is why he's the Antichrist. So the stars that are swept down with the dragon is depicted here at the beginning of the show when she's descending, like in amidst these stars in the background. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.